Good afternoon. Jimmy here in Chicago. Hope everybody's having a nice weekend. Special shout out to all the beautiful mothers out there, especially the mothers that we've lost, our moms that are in heaven. I want to do a short story today. We're going to talk about the West Coast. When Joey Aiuppa, boss of the Chicago outfit, sent a hit team of 7 guys on a West Coast trip to take care of business. It's very important business to the Chicago outfit bosses. You know, living in Chicago, we think about where we're going to retire someday, right? Sometimes I lean towards Miami, Florida, in that area, or the West Coast. It's a tough decision. What I like about the West Coast, though, is you're close to Vegas, California, Arizona. What I like about Florida is you got the ocean. But regardless, I would definitely miss Chicago, the food, the neighborhoods. Even though it's the most corrupt city to live in, it's still, in my opinion, the best city in America. But let's get into it. We're going to talk about some of the hits that took place in the West Coast. Places like Nevada, Arizona, California. Now, as I said many times in my videos, nobody has clipped more guys than this man here, Joey Aiuppa, Joey O'Brien, Joey Doves, whatever you want to call him. This guy goes back to the Al Capone days, going back to the 1920s. He led the Chicago outfit with violence. Anybody that got out of line, Aiuppa would have him clipped. Even if Joey Aiuppa suspected of somebody cooperating, he wasn't taking any chances. He was talked about quite a bit during the Family Secrets trial and at the Sam Carlisi crew trial. The maid members and the associates of the Chicago outfit would refer to Aiuppa as the old man. And right before he went to prison during the strawman case, that's where him, Joe Lombardo, Jack Cerrone, Angelo LaPetria, Nick Savella, and some other Kansas City guys got pinched for skimming millions of dollars from some of the mobbed up casinos and hotels in Nevada. The corporation was called the Argent Corporation. They controlled 4 Chicago, Kansas City hotel casinos, and they were ran by the mob's frontman, Alan Glick. But this is Joey Aiuppa that gave the order to kill the guys we're going to talk about. Now here's little Jimmy Marcello. This man is still alive in federal prison. I think he's at the ADX Supermax, but I'm not sure. But there's no reason for a man like this to be held in a maximum security prison. He is definitely not a threat to anybody. But according to the government, he at one time was the underboss of Chicago outfit, very close with Sam Carlisi. And it was Nick Calabrese's testimony that convicted Jimmy Marcello and pretty much gave him a life sentence. First time I ever seen Jimmy Marcello was in the early 1990s. He stood trial with Sam Carlisi. He sat next to Carlisi every day, and that was Sam's underboss, his right-hand man. Jimmy Marcello does his time like a man, comes home, relaxing with his family, and within a couple months, the feds come knocking on his door, and he gets indicted for the Family Secrets trial. Just imagine that. You serve, 10, 12 years in prison. You finally come home and you get pinched again. Nick Calabrese testified that he participated in setting up the Spilotro brothers and a couple other murders dating back to 1974. Nick Calabrese was cellmates with Jimmy Marcello in, I think it was Pekin or Milan, Michigan. Nick Calabrese complained to Jimmy that his brother wasn't treating him right, wasn't paying him for all the work he was doing. So Jimmy Marcello said when they get out of the can, Nick could come work for Jimmy's crew. Jimmy Marcello immediately had his brother Mikey Marcello start dropping off $5,000 every month to Nick Calabrese's wife while he was in the joint. Nobody else in the outfit, no family, no friend, no associates, were doing anything about Nick Calabrese and his wife. Jimmy Marcello was the only one that stepped forward and made sure that Nick's family was taken care of when he was away. Jimmy felt that was good insurance for him, like he talked about with his brother Mikey in code during prison visits. Jimmy said he waved his hands saying that he's not worried about Nick flipping because that was some of the best money he's ever spent, meaning the monthly payments. And Mikey Marcello told him, I hope that works out for you, buddy. And obviously it didn't. Nick Calabrese testified. He also testified that Jimmy Marcello gave him an Uzi and 2 hand grenades to take on a train from Chicago all the way out to Nevada. This is where they were going to kill the Spilotro brothers. It came out during the family secrets trial that Plan A, according to Nick Calabrese, they sent a hit team of 7 guys out there to kill the Spilotros. And none of the 7 guys arrived there together. Nick Calabrese testified Jimmy Marcello gave him the Uzi, 2 grenades. He took a train all the way from Chicago to Nevada. Nick Calabrese also testified that John Feckerata drove out there. Feckerata made a couple stops and was doing some things out there that he should have been doing that he could have easily got clipped on. For example, Feckerata was gambling. He actually won, and he had Nick Calabrese sign for it. So that was a big no-no. They had Nick Calabrese's signature on a specific day and time where it could prove they were in the area when their victim was about to get killed. That would have directly showed they were in the same vicinity by Nick Calabrese signing the voucher that John Feckerata won. That was a no-no. That was just one of many fuck-ups by John Feckerata. But according to Nick, John Feckerata was one of the 7 hitmen that took part in this West Coast trip. Now, another guy in the West Coast that was living out there in the LA area was a sleeper for the Chicago outfit, Joey Hansen, Chicago outfit associate, career criminal, and killer. This guy was the trigger man that shotgun blasted Danny Seifert back in 1974. Him and Tony Spilotro killed Danny Seifert when he was running out of the office after Frankie Schweiss cracked him in the head and tried to handcuff him. Danny Seifert broke free, ran out of the office, only to be met by Joey Hansen and Tony Spilotro, where they blasted him with shotguns, killing him right in front of his wife, Mrs. Seifert, and their son, Joey. Another hitman, if you will. Another guy, part of the crew that was sent out west, was 26th Street crew associate James DeForty, Jimmy Poker. They called him Poker because he was always playing cards. Frank Calabrese thought he was a snitch, but he wasn't a snitch. When the FBI showed up at his door, he stood up. He didn't say anything. He wouldn't talk to him. He did time in prison, never ratted, never rolled. He did heavy work for Chicago outfit. Also, your average bank robbers, armed car robbery, hijacking, burglary, pretty much a career criminal. One time, Poker showed up for a hit with alcohol in his breath. Frank Calabrese smacked him and sent him home. That's how serious Frankie the Breeze was. But according to Nick Calabrese, Imovaci, Jimmy DeForty, was one of the men that killed Jay Vandermeer in Arizona. He was also one of the guys involved in the Imovaci hit. Another one of the guys on the team on the West Coast who flew out there was Jimmy the Lapper LaPetria. This is Angelo LeBull's boss of the Chinatown crew. This is his brother, Jimmy LaPetria. He was one of the hitmen involved in the Imovaci hit, the Vandermeer hit, and a couple others. According to Nick Calabrese, he was one of the men that Jimmy Marcello picked up at a Venture parking lot the day the Splotros went missing. Nicky Calabrese testified that Jimmy Marcello picked up this man here, Jimmy LaPetria, John Theckerata, and Nick Calabrese. He picked them up and dropped them off at the house in Bensonville. According to Nick Calabrese, if you believe his testimony, this man right here was one of the men that beat and stomped Tony Spilotro to death. That's Jimmy LaPetria. I bring him up because he was one of the guys that met the other hit team out in the West Coast to take care of business. Now here you got Frankie Schweiss, right? They called this guy Hitler. They also called him the German. He had a little German in him. He was kind of like a floater for the Chicago outfit, an enforcer, prolific hitman, accused of a lot of high-ranking murders. He was one of the defendants at the Family Secrets trial. He actually went on the lam when the Family Secrets indictments came down. Him, Joey Lombardo, took off. Feds had no idea where they were, especially Joey. They eventually, kind of like Whitey Bulger, they tied him. He was living, I think, in Kentucky with one of his girlfriends. I know his daughter, Nora Schweiss. She promotes his wine, the German, which is kind of funny. I asked her, why do you call it the German? Because on the bottle of the wine is a picture of a German Shepherd. She said that that was his favorite dog. So she calls her wine, which is private label, the German, with a nice German Shepherd logo on it. But to Nora, her dad was not an outfit killer. That's all bullshit made up by the media. But everyone knows his reputation. He was one of the masked gunmen that tried to handcuff Danny Seifert, cracked him in the head a couple times with the head. But Seifert was so strong, he broke free. This guy also was the prime suspect in when they killed Alan Dorfman and many other hits. A very, very dangerous individual. I'll never forget seeing him during the sentencing of the Family Secrets trial because he was too sick to stand trial. He looked terrible. He aged. He lost a lot of weight. He came out shackled. And as soon as he saw the federal prosecutor, who was a Muslim, he started making racial, calling them racial things and saying some pretty nasty things to the prosecutor. And they basically, the judge wouldn't allow it, and they removed him from the courtroom immediately. But this is Frankie Schweiss, And it was his idea that, you see, at first, when the crew finally assembled, they couldn't really get a good tail on Michael and Tony. They couldn't really catch both of them at the same time. And at one point, Nick Calabrese testified that he saw a brown van with Solozzi and Edelson plates. That's a very well-known, mobbed-up car dealership in Chicago. And that was Michael Spilotro driving that van. So Frankie Schweiss suggested that they were going to kill Tony Spilotro and Michael Spilotro as soon as Michael came out of court, because they knew he had a court case coming up, and they were going to pull up in a van. Frankie Schweiss was going to get out and kill Tony and Michael right there on the courtroom steps with an Uzi. But the crew wasn't so sure that would work. They thought there's no way they would get out. There's only one way in this town, one way out. There was no way they can get away with it. And they felt the bosses would get pissed because it would draw a lot of heat. Just imagine, Tony was very well known in Vegas. A lot of people, he was public enemy number one. So him and his brother got killed with an Uzi right in front of a court building. That would have got some global attention. So they called that off. They didn't like that idea, and they switched to Plan B. We all know what Plan B was. Plan B was they would call the brothers back to Chicago. I think Tony had a court case in Chicago as well. Now, keep in mind, during this guy had a bad heart. His health wasn't too good. You can imagine the stress that he was under, knowing he fucked everything up. So the ruse was they were going to make him a boss and make Michael Spilotro a made man, even though Michael never really did any work. The brothers really had no choice to attend that meeting. When you're whistled in that life, you have to go. So they reluctantly went. They knew they were in trouble. Michael Spilotro gave his jewelry and cash to his wife. She testified in court that he was very nervous that day, and he told her, if I'm not back by 9 o'clock, 9:30, something is seriously wrong. He never came back. His daughter testified that he kept telling her all day prior to the day he disappeared how much he loved her. He was acting very strange, she thought. Jimmy Marcello, according to Nick Calabrese, picked up Michael and Tony Spilotro, brought him to the house in Bensonville. When the brothers walked down the basement stairs, Michael was greeted by Nick because they were friends. Hi, Nick, how are you? He was greeted with a handshake. Nick Calabrese tackled him, grabbed him by the ankles, and then Louis the Mooch, strangled Michael Spilotro with a rope. Nick testified he died quickly, didn't put up much of a fight. John Nonos DeFranzo picked up a small .22 caliber gun that fell out of Michael's pants, unloaded it, and then he wiped a smudge of blood off the wall. Tony Spilotro asked if he could say a prayer. Nick said he didn't hear anything. And the heavyweights of the Chicago outfit began to brutally beat and stomp this guy to death. The autopsy photo they showed in court was so gross you couldn't even look at it. From his chest to his head was all black, blue, and purple. You couldn't even recognize that it was Tony Spilotro. But Joe Aiuppa, again, sent a hit team. Most of the guys were from the 26th Street crew and a few from other crews. They were originally going to kill the brothers out west, but they called it off, switched to Plan B. Speaking of West Coast murders, you got the devastating death of Marilyn Monroe. We all know she ran into some trouble with guys like Sam Giancana, Bobby Kennedy, Frank Sinatra, and others, and very suspicious suicide. Allegedly, two maintenance guys had access to her room to do some repairs, and one of them alleged was Frankie Schweiss, Frank the German, gave her a shot in the ass and killed her. His suspect was allegedly Tony Spilotro, but this is just one of many unsolved murders by the Chicago outfit. What do you guys know? What do you guys think? Who do you think killed Marilyn Monroe? But that happened, I think, at her home in Beverly Hills. Joey Hansen could have been involved in that as well. But Frankie Schweiss, Chicago outfit killer, and his accomplice were two of the prime suspects. Now, who remembers this? In Nevada, one day Lefty Rosenthal went to start his car. Kaboom. He's so lucky to survive this. He survived it. A lot of people found out years later that Lefty was an informant. Some people thought Tony Spilotro, his best friend, was responsible for this. Some people think the Chicago outfit was responsible for this, but most likely it was the Kansas City guys. Because when the Kansas City guys found out he was an informant, they went to get approval from IUPA or JB, and obviously they approved it. But he's very lucky to survive this. This is what was left of Lefty Rosenthal's car. Another hit, I just did a story about this, was George J. Vandermark. This guy disappeared in 1976, and he was the slot host for 4 mobbed up casinos, hotels in Las Vegas. They were skimming around $7 million just in the slots alone, and he was only kicking in 4. He stole $3 million from the outfit. They found out Joey Upa had enough of his bullshit. He sent John Fecarata and Poker. They caught up with Jay at a resort. He was hiding out in Arizona, shot him a couple times in the head with a .22, and then wheeled his dead body out of there in a wheelchair, and then eventually dumped him somewhere in the desert. And his body till this day has never been found. And a couple years later, his son Jeff was killed in his apartment in Nevada. But that's a father and son duo, victims of Chicago outfit. A lot of holes in that desert, and most of them are Chicago outfit related. Or you had the Tony Spilotro with the hole in the wall grain. Who knows how many drug dealers, degenerate gamblers, and guys that fucked up ended up out there. But this is one of them. This guy's body's never been found. Now, here's another woman you don't hear too much about. If you remember from the movie Casino, Tamara Rand. She was a Nevada executive, and she had a major beef with Alan Glick. She was about to expose Alan Glick, and we all know that could not happen. And for some people think that the mob guys don't kill women. Yes, they do. This woman was killed by the Chicago outfit, one of many unsolved murders. She was shot and killed, I forget what year, probably early 80s, late 70s. Just kind of reminds me of Dauber, Billy Dauber's wife, when they killed the Daubers. It was the Chinatown crew working with the Wild Bunch crew, and they didn't give a fuck that Charlotte Dauber was going to be with William Dauber. They shotgun blasted both of them, husband and wife. But this woman here, she was about to blow the whistle on all the skimming and stuff going on in Nevada, and Alan Glick knew he had a problem with her, and eventually Tony Spilotro and one of his crew killed this poor woman. Now, here's a guy, speaking of Spilotro, one of his best friends, Fat Herbie Blinstein, however you say his last name, Fat Herbie, we'll call him, Chicago outfit associate, killer, burglar, thief, pretty much a career criminal, pretty much kept a low profile. But once the Chicago outfit lost a lot of their power and influence out in Vegas, and once the Spalaccio brothers were killed, he had issues with other crime families. I think one of them was LA, one of them was maybe Buffalo, and eventually they killed him out west. I'm surprised he stuck around. You think he maybe would have went down to Miami or something. But they eventually took over his rackets and killed him. Now here's another guy, looks like a nice guy, Jimmy Pappas. He got involved. He ran afoul with Tony Spalaccio. I think he was a pit boss or something. He was one of the men that they found in a barrel. He was shot and killed. But a lot of drug dealers, drug users, degenerate gamblers, criminals, burglars, a lot of guys that ran afoul that had problems with Tony Spalaccio and the Hole in the Wall gang. Spalaccio was doing a lot of unsanctioned hits. He was just playing God out there, killing people without getting any permission from the outfit bosses. So you had his crew doing a lot of killing, and plus you had whatever killings that IUPA had ordered. So there was a lot of killing going on the West Coast, and the vast majority of them are unsolved to this day. If it wasn't for Nick Calabrese testifying to 14 murders that he participated in, and then he gave the outfit probably information on another 12, that would be even more unsolved murders. But they did a really good job covering their tracks. And then we talked about this earlier with the issues going on in Lake Mead. They're finding, I think they found 5 to 7 barrels of human remains. Pretty much every single one of those has one of those killings has something to do with the Chicago outfit. Most likely, the others ended up in holes in the deserts. Guys like Imo Vaci, where they shot and killed him and just tossed him off to the side, or Jay Vandermark, where they dug a hole. But like I said, a lot of guys ended up in holes pre-dug out in the desert. Great place to bury somebody. Or as you can see by all those empty barrels showing up at in Lake Mead, as soon as they pop off the lid on those 55-gallon drums, depending on how long the bodies has decomposed, usually you could tell by the skull that there's been a couple shots to the head. But most of the murders that took place from, say, the 1970s, probably to the early 1990s, I would say a lot of those murders were directly related to the Chicago outfit, whether they came from the higher-ups, guys like Joey Aupa, or cowboys like Tony Spalaccio and the Hole in the Wall gang. And before I go, I forgot to mention the Imo Vaci hit. I did a story on this if you guys want to check it out. But this is another murder that happened when they were plotting to kill the Spalaccios. They knew they had to get some kind of business done. The crew knew they better get some things taken care of. Otherwise, they'd be in a lot of deep shit when they came back to Chicago. Because Joey Aupa, Sam Carlisi, Ferriola, they were getting a little antsy, a little impatient that Nick Calabrese and 6 other guys were out west spending a lot of money and nothing was getting done. And if that continues, that whole crew could have got clipped. So why they were out there, Nick Calabrese knew he had to kill Imo Vaci. At least they accomplished something while they were out there. So after tailing this guy for weeks, they figured the best place to kill him was at one of his restaurants. So Paulie Shero, the Indian, was on the lookout. Joey Hansen was the driver. Nick Calabrese was the shooter, and one other guy I'm forgetting. Feccarata fucked up. Here's mistake number 2 he made. Feccarata left early and went back home to Chicago. He got a little spooked, and he was supposed to be on this hit. So that they kind of questioned that. So these were just a couple things that John Feccarata did and eventually cost him his life. But Imo Vaci, he was about to testify to the grand jury. He had information on the disappearance of Jay Vandermark. He was a Chicago outfit associate, also owned a lot of restaurants and resorts. And Nick Calabrese testified they pulled the van right up to his car and waited for him. So when he came out of the restaurant to his car, Nick Calabrese slid open the door, grabbed him, threw him in the van, and he started taking out his wallet, giving him the money. He thought they were there to rob him. But once Imo Vaci saw the blue plastic tarp, he said, "I won't say a word," meaning he knew what was up. Nick Calabrese shot him a couple times, but he had some weak ammunition or something that really didn't kill him, to his surprise. So Joey Hansen, while he was driving, reached back with one arm and finished Imo Vaci off. So here they are driving around the fucking desert in the middle of nowhere, 2 guys from Chicago. This is before GPS and cell phones. And their route to where they dug the pre-hole, it was quite a ways away, several miles away. So they decided, they got nervous, rather than drive around a dead body in their van to the predetermined hole, they just dumped Imo Vaci's body out on the side of the road. But this was one of the hits that Joey Upa wanted done while they're out on the West Coast. So it's literally killing 2-3 birds with one stone. Well, while you're out there killing these Fletcher brothers, we also want the same crew or part of the crew to go ahead and kill Imo Vaci. And I think there was another guy they tried to kill out there, why they did, with an explosive, but the guy survived. But what a trip, right? What a West Coast trip. But this went on for months. The whole time, the outfit bosses were getting a little antsy. They wanted these guys planted. Imo Vaci ended up getting killed, and this was one of the 14 murders that he testified to. Thanks, guys. God bless all the mothers out there, especially the ones that are in heaven. Have a great weekend. If you like my Chicago mob trial stories, please hit the like button. Share with your friends. I appreciate all the comments. Take care.